Welcome to our book review. Today, we will examine a source that will have a paradigm effect on media influences.
When a theory contradicts the empirical reality it encounters, the paradigm breaks. This book is also based on studies that break powerful influence theories.
I want you to picture something for me for just a second. Imagine you're walking through a crowded city. You look up and you see these strings attached to everyone's limbs. Strings on their wrists when they reach for a specific brand of coffee. Strings on their hands when they cast a ballot. And if you follow those strings up, way up into the clouds, they all lead to this giant hand. The puppet master, the media tycoon, the algorithm.
It's a terrifying image, right? But it's also kind of comforting. Comforting. I mean, that sounds like a total nightmare to me.
Well, it's comforting because it lets us off the hook. You know, if we're all being brainwashed, it's not our fault. If the world is chaotic, it's because they are controlling it. But what if I told you this? Strings aren't real, or at least they aren't attached to where you think they are.
You're getting at one of the most persistent myths in modern history. This idea that mass media has a direct, almost hypnotic control over the human mind.
Exactly. Today, we are doing a book review into a stack of research that suggests the puppet master is actually just your neighbor Bob, or your spouse, or that guy at the gym. We're unpacking a landmark piece of sociology that totally reinvented how we understand influence.
We're looking at the 1955 classic Personal Influence, the part played by people in the flow of mass communications by Elihu Katz and Lazarsfeld.
And before you tune out because I said 1955, let me stop you. This is not a history lesson. This is the origin story of why that Super Bowl ad didn't make you buy the car, but your friend's 5-minute rant did.
It's the discovery of the two-step flow of communication, and honestly, the conclusion they reached back then is probably more relevant in our fragmented digital worlds than it was when everyone was watching the same 3 TV channels.
So set the stage for us before Katz and Lazarsfeld came along and ruined the party. What do people believe? Because I have to assume in the 1930s and 40s, with the rise of radio and cinema, people were terrified of propaganda.
They were petrified. I mean, you have to understand the context. They were watching the rise of fascism in Europe. They saw these distinct leaders using radio to whip crowds into a frenzy. So the prevailing academic theory was called the magic bullet theory.
Subtlety was not their strong suit.
No. Or sometimes the hypodermic needle theory. The model was incredibly simple. The media is a syringe. You load it with a message, buy the soap, hate this enemy, vote for this guy. You inject it into the population,
And bang, the population reacts.
Exactly. The assumption was that society was an atomized mass.
Atomized meaning we were all just lonely floating particles waiting to be told what to do.
That's it. The theory assumed that industrialization had destroyed our social bonds. We were isolated, disconnected individuals. And that made us, well, defenseless targets for the guy with the microphone.
So the expectation was that if you control the airwaves, you basically control the world.
Precisely. And that is what these researchers expected to find when they went into the field for the 1940 presidential election. This was the study that really started it all. They set up shop in Erie County, Ohio, and they weren't just taking a poll. They tracked the same people month after month. They wanted to see exactly how radio speeches and newspaper editorials were changing minds in real time.
And this was FDR versus Wilkie. I mean, the golden age of radio. If ever the magic bullet was going to work, it would be then FDR was practically in the living room with you.
You would think so. The researchers were absolutely ready to document the awesome power of mass media. But when they got the data, they were just baffled. The media wasn't changing vote decisions. It was barely even shifting the needle.
Wait, so people were listening to the speeches, reading the papers, and just...
It was worse than that. They weren't even really engaging with the opposition. But more importantly, when the researchers asked people, "So what made you decide to vote this way?" Nobody pointed to the radio. They pointed to other people.
My dad has always voted this way, or my husband thinks Will K is a distinct choice.
Exactly that. They found that people voted in blocks. Wives voted like husbands, Club members voted like other club members. The media didn't create new opinions. It mostly just reinforced what the person's social circle already believed. They called this crystallization.
Crystallization. That's a great image. So the media doesn't pour the liquid. Yeah, it just freezes what's already in the cup.
That is a perfect analogy. The media gave people the arguments they needed to defend the choice they had already made to fit in with their group. And this realization, this births the two-step flow theory.
Okay, walk us through the 2 steps.
Step 1. Information flows from mass media to these specific individuals they call opinion leaders. Step 2. Those opinion leaders then interpret the information and pass it on to the less active sections of the population.
Okay, we have to pause on opinion leader, because in 2026, when I hear that, I think of an influencer. You know, someone with perfect lighting, a sponsorship deal, and 1 million followers. Is that who they found in 1940 Ohio?
Not at all. And this is probably the biggest misconception in the Katz and Lazarsfeld model. An opinion leader isn't a celebrity. It's not a top-down structure. They found what they called horizontal opinion leadership.
Horizontal meaning, peer-to-peer.
Correct influence stays within your social layer. They found opinion leaders among the wealthy, sure, but they also found them among factory workers, among stay-at-home mothers, among the unemployed. A blue-collar worker isn't looking to some university professor or a rich banker to tell him which car to buy.
No.
He's looking to the guy in the assembly line next to him who just seems to know about cars.
So it's not the elite tell the masses what to think. It's more like the slightly more informed guy tells his friend what to think.
Influences like that was the key finding in fashion and marketing, for example. They found that women were almost exclusively influencing other women of the same social status. There is very little trickle down from the rich to the poor.
This just flies in the face of the great man theory of history, doesn't it? The source material mentions Elmo Roper, who was a polling giant back then. Get a very different view.
Yeah, it's actually quite funny because Roper wrote the introduction to this very book, but his own theory was completely different. He believed in the great thinker model. In his view, ideas start with this tiny group of geniuses, Plato, Einstein, then it passes to great disciples, then great disseminators like broadcasters or senators, and eventually it trickles all the way down to the politically inert masses.
That sounds incredibly arrogant. Like the politically inert are just these empty vessels waiting for wisdom to drip down from the mountaintop.
It is very hierarchical and look for big abstract philosophical concepts. Maybe Roper has a point, but Katz and Lazarsfeld prove that for the stuff of daily life. What cereal to eat, what movie to see, who to trust in a local election. Roper was dead wrong. The political owner aren't looking up at the mountaintop. They're looking at each other.
So if these opinion leaders are just everyday people, how do you spot one? If I'm at a dinner party, is there a secret handshake or something?
They call them molecular leaders because they're these small, essential units of the social fabric. The study identified a few key traits. First, they're just slightly more interested in the specific topic than you are.
The guy who actually reads the tech specs on the new phone.
Right. But the real defining characteristic is exposure. The opinion leaders consume significantly more mass media than the people they influence. They're the ones reading the niche magazines, listening to the detailed news reports. They act as the relay point.
So they're the gatekeepers. Gatekeepers and translators, yeah. They sort of verify the information for their group. This all makes the magic bullet theory look pretty silly in retrospect, but it does beg a question for me. If I'm a brand or a politician or a health organization, and I can't just inject my message into people's brains, what is stopping me? Why is the bullet bouncing off? The book talks about intervening variables.
Right? This is the obstacle course. Katz and Lazarsfeld realized that between the radio tower and the listener's brain, there are 4 or 5 massive walls that a message has to smash through.
Let's break these walls down. Wall number 1.
Exposure. This sounds obvious, but it's the biggest hurdle. You can't be influenced by a message you didn't see. In a free society, people self-select. If I'm a die-hard partisan, I am simply not tuning into the opposition's channel.
I just scroll right past it.
Exactly. And even if you do see it, you hit the next wall. Predisposition. This is what we call confirmation bias today. The book cites this study on prejudice. People. That is just. It's a masterclass in human stubbornness.
Oh, I read this part. This is where they showed people cartoons about tolerance, right?
Yes, they showed prejudice individuals. A cartoon series featuring a character called Mr. Bigot. The cartoons were explicitly mocking a prejudice. The message was clear. Don't be like this guy.
Let me guess. The prejudiced people saw the cartoon and said, "Oh wow, I've been a jerk my whole life."
If only. No, they actually distorted the message to fit their existing worldview. They would interpret the tolerance cartoon as a defense of their own prejudice, or they'd rationalize it as, oh, it's just a joke with no real meaning. They mentally rewrite the script so they wouldn't have to change their minds.
That's terrifying. Like, it means you can't just fact-check someone out of a belief. If the mind is set, the message just warps around it.
Precisely. And then you have medium. Is it print or radio?
Yeah,
And content. How is it phrased? But the book argues that all of those barriers were already kind of known to researchers. The real breakthrough was the fifth variable, the one that trumped everything else.
interpersonal relations. The people around you. The group always wins. You cannot treat a listener as an isolated island. They are embedded in a network, family, co-workers, friends, and these people are the ultimate filter. If a media message comes in that conflicts with the group's norms, the individual will almost always reject the message to stay safe within the group.
It's social survival. Being right isn't worth being an outcast.
Exactly. And this leads to a section, the deep dive, that I found really fascinating. It wasn't just media studies finding this in the 40s and 50s. It seems like sociology as a whole suddenly rediscovered the power of the group.
Yeah, the notes mentioned that industrial management and even the military were having the same epiphany at pretty much the same time.
It was a massive paradigm shift. For a long time, the prevailing theory in business was scientific management. Treat the worker like a biological machine, optimize the movements, optimize the lighting, get more output.
And this led to the famous Hawthorne studies.
A classic case of accidental discovery. Researchers went into a factory to see if better lighting would make workers more productive. They turned the lights up, productivity went up. Logical. But then, just to check, they turned the lights down.
And logically, productivity should drop.
But it went up again. They shortened the break times, productivity went up. They lengthened the break times, productivity went up.
At this point, they're just messing with them. Why do the numbers keep climbing?
Because for the first time, someone was paying attention to them. The workers had formed what the study called a cheerful, intimate group. They were working harder because they were bonding with each other. It became a game. They were loyal to each other. The physical environment, the lighting, the pay mattered far less than the social reality of we are in this together.
So the manager thought he was optimizing a machine, but he was actually dealing with a social club.
And the military found the exact same thing. The book references the American soldier, this massive study from World War II. The generals all assumed soldiers fought for the cause, patriotism, hatred of the enemy, the stuff on the propaganda poster.
Uncle Sam wants you.
Right. But when they interviewed the soldiers in the trenches, they found that was all secondary. Men didn't fight for the Constitution. They fought for their buddies. They fought for their immediate unit. If the group norm was, we are brave, they were brave. If the group norm was, we keep our heads down, they kept their heads down. The primary group was the shield against the terror of war, not the ideology.
It's the Band of Brothers effect. You don't charge the hill for the president, you charge the hill for the guy next to you.
And this extends even to children. There's a study in there by the Rileys about kids and television. This is so relevant for parents today who worry about video games or YouTube. They looked at kids watching violent action shows.
And the assumption is always violent show makes a violent kid.
But the data showed it depended entirely on the child's social life. The socially integrated kids, the kids with lots of friends, watched the Westerns and then went outside to play cowboys and Indians. The media was just a prop for their social interaction.
They use the content to bond.
Exactly. But the isolated kids, the ones without a peer group, used the exact same shows for what the researchers called creepy brooding fantasy. They used it to escape. So the media wasn't the problem. The lack of a primary group was the problem.
That is such a crucial nuance. We always blame the content, but we rarely look at the context of the person who's consuming it.
Context is everything. And this brings us to the final piece of the puzzle. We've established that the group is powerful. It filters messages. It protects us. But sometimes, as a society, we do want to change minds. We want to sell good citizenship or promote public health or stop prejudice.
Right? If the group just blocks everything, how do you ever make progress?
Well, the notes mention a researcher named G.D. Weeb who asked a really simple but frustrating question. Why can I sell soap so easily, but I can't sell brotherhood?
It's the ultimate marketing problem. You see a Coke ad, you buy a Coke, you see a vote ad, and turnout stays flat. What? What is the difference?
We'd called it the social mechanism. Think about buying soap. You hear the ad, you have the motivation. What do? You walk to the store. The store is the mechanism. It is physically there. It's easy. The path from I want this to I have this is frictionless.
But for brotherhood or citizenship,
He analyzed a radio campaign that asked people to form neighborhood councils to fight juvenile delinquency. It was a great show, powerful message. But nothing happened because there was no neighborhood council store.
they asked people to build the mechanism themselves.
Exactly. And that is too big of an ask. Weeb's conclusion was brilliant. Motivation requires a social outlet to become action. If there is no group or mechanism ready to hook up to the energy generated by the media, just way it dissipates into thin air,
That is a light bulb moment for anyone working in nonprofits or activism. It's not enough to just raise awareness. You have to build the infrastructure where people could actually go and do the thing.
you have to give the primary group a task they can actually perform. Otherwise, it's all just noise.
So let's zoom out a bit. This whole deep dive really flips the script on how we view influence. We started by talking about the fear of the puppet master. But if Katz and Lazarsfeld to right, we aren't puppets on strings. We're more like climbers on a rope team.
That's a good analogy. If one falls, the others catch him. If one moves up, he pulls the others along. We process the world together. The primary group is a protective shield against mass manipulation.
So it means we're resilient. We aren't just empty vessels for propaganda. But here is the thought I want to leave our listener with, and it's a bit of a curveball.
Go on.
Katz and Lazarsfeld wrote this in 1955. They were looking at face-to-face groups, people talking over the backyard fence, guys at the bowling league.
The world has changed a little bit since then.
Just a bit. Today, our primary group is often digital. We have friends we've never met, but more importantly, the algorithms decide which of those friends we see updates from. That kind of brings the scary part back in, doesn't it?
It does if the two-step flow relies on opinion leaders, and the algorithm decides who your opinion leaders are. Well, maybe the Pocket Master is back. He's just not on the radio tower anymore. He's hiding in the code, choosing which neighbor you get to listen to.
It's just that those intervening variables might be dissolving. If the algorithm knows your predispositions better than you do, and it controls your exposure, the shield of the primary group might be getting weaker or worse. The group itself becomes the echo chamber.
The strings might be cut, but the walls are closing in. A comforting thought for your next doom scroll.
Always happy to end on an existential crisis.
That's what we do here. Check your sources, talk to your actual neighbors, and we'll see you in the next book review.